I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that
She's
is
not going to be
yeah.
saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
So, like many things that are older than my parents, the concept of the Disney princess has become rather clouded in, well, I guess, controversy. Giving them live action updates for modern audiences has failed that, as people look back at these movies asking about possible harmful tropes they may have pushed and modern improvements to storytelling that could be applied. Disney itself even lampshades some of the weird details the older movies choose to gloss over because they are fairy tales aimed at kids.
You can't marry a man you just met. You can if it's true love. Anna, what do you know about true love? Well, more than you.
But I think by sheer age, some of the actual tropes of classic Disney princesses have been lost to time. Like a lot of shonen anime discussion, a lot of the discourse I see around this movie makes me think you have not watched this since you were the age of the target audience. So I watched the first 3 movies classified under the Disney Princess banner to see just how accurate modern perceptions of them are and the tropes and ideas they share. These are Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty.
Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up?
Yes, what is up with that?
She is a princess!
Yeah, I also have some words to say about the princes. You could say I'm reading too deep into these movies to come up with this video, but if people can say the prince from Snow White is literally an R word, nothing I say here is that crazy. Also, if this video does well, I might make videos looking at these movies individually. I already have some ideas. The first thing to note about these movies is that they are, essentially, power fantasies. No, really. They follow protagonists who are actually way above the station they currently find themselves in. Snow White is a princess forced to work as a scullery maid. Cinderella is probably a noble woman forced to work as a maid. And Aurora is a princess forced to live in hiding. Yeah, you'll find that Sleeping Beauty is the odd one out on this list. They are forced by those who nominally have power over them, but who they are, at least as people, better than, into these positions. That's why the wicked stepmother is so necessary. No one has more control over a child than their parents, and a step-parent who doesn't love the child is very easy to imagine being abusive. Maleficent makes up for this by being an extremely powerful witch. The evil queen, Queen Grimhilda, and the wicked stepmother, Lady Tremaine, are keeping their stepdaughters down in an attempt to prop themselves up. The evil queen wants to remain the first in the land, and the wicked stepmother prioritizes her daughters and might be a black widow, who knows. Maleficent's just petty. But when the protagonists are given an opportunity to let their talents and traits shine, they begin to thrive, all the way into a castle. But in the place of the power to kill God, they are given more normal traits. Kindness, perseverance, hope, a good work ethic, all that stuff. But now, let's actually look at these movies. The first thing to note about Snow White is how dark it is.
Thirsty? I will drink.
Holy shit, Disney. The evil queen may hate Snow White for her beauty and hyper-focus on purely aesthetic things, but Snow's actual biggest strengths are her kindness and work ethic. Yeah, the first movie is low-key about rejecting the idea that beauty defines worth, with a villain who doesn't value all the many things and all the power she has because she isn't the prettiest. This should be fun. When Snow finds herself lost in the forest, it's her kindness that gets the animals to help her find a place to stay and listen to her on how to properly clean it up. And she uses her homemaking skills as a bargaining tool in order to get a place to live with the dwarves. And despite her soft-spoken nature, she clearly does not plan on letting anyone walk all over her.
Oh, perhaps you have washed.
Perhaps we... Yes.
But when?
Recently.
Let me see your hands.
I'm not gonna say she's like an amazingly written character. I'm just gonna say that I struggle to say that Asha from Wish, 86 years later, is better constructed as a character or a narrative driving force. It's Snow's kindness that defeats the evil queen. No, I'm not saying Snow's kindness summoned lightning and dropped a rock on the woman and made vultures eat the remains. Jesus Christ, Disney. Snow's kindness also acts as a flaw because taken to the extreme, it becomes the naivete that lets the evil queen poison her. But that kindness is what motivates everyone, even the tsundere Grumpy, to help her and rush to her aid, leading to the queen's death. Then she's woken up by the true love she's been wishing for, who carries her off to his palace after kissing her awake with love's first kiss. Apparently his name is Prince Florian. I'm just gonna keep calling him the prince cause I think it's funnier. As for why the prince kisses the dead girl, I mean, the story specifies he heard that she's sleeping, not dead. Okay, that's only slightly better. Actually, I think I can come up with an explanation for why the prince kisses her. Because knowing nothing about this guy means we can pretty much assume anything. Like, say, the prince is from a magical kingdom and knew the kiss might wake her up. The cure to the sleeping death isn't a secret if you know what it is, and he immediately went to try and kiss this girl he likes. I mean, it would make the most sense that he knew it could wake her up. What evidence do I have, you ask? The prince arrived into the movie in response to Snow White making a wish, and when he carries her off to his kingdom, we see this ethereal glowing castle in the sky. But that's just a theory. A film theory. But yeah, it was probably just a weird kiss goodbye. Also, supplementary material says Snow is 14 and the prince is 18. My eyes on this YouTube poll disagree. And don't get me started on the people who expect me to believe this guy is 31 for some reason. Cinderella's greatest attributes are her perseverance and gentle nature. While the mice in the movie largely exist to stretch out the runtime and provide comedic relief, they also serve as evidence of her kindness as she makes sure to take care of all the animals while she endures her stepfamily's abuse. She also has even more personality than Snow White.
Maybe I should interrupt the music lesson.
The mice in turn try to help her with her dress so she would be ready for the ball, but her family runs interference, ruining the dress and leaving her crying and feeling like giving up. But that's when the fairy godmother shows up and rewards her for her kindness and belief and gives her what she wants by sending her to the ball, with the animals' help. Prince Charming falling in love with her is a nice bonus. And when Lady Tremaine tries to keep her away, those same animals work together to rush to her rescue. Well, except Lucifer, but he's literally named Lucifer. Once again, the princess's inherent kindness triumphs over evil and they rise beyond their tormentor. You know, it's crazy, Lady Tremaine has less of a body count than the evil queen, but is so much more terrifying in how manipulative and malicious she is.
They give it just the right touch. Don't you think so, Drizella?
No, I don't. I think she's... Oh, why, you little thief!
Girls. That's quite enough. Good night.
What an amazing villain. Prince Charming apparently got named Henry by Disney France, but I prefer just assuming his name is literally Charming. Cinderella is basically a massive improvement on Snow White in almost all regards, though I think Snow White actually has more agency as an active participant in the plot by way of being on our own 10 minutes in, as opposed to Cinderella, whose victories are more of a result of past actions inspiring others to help her. It's a weird scenario where Cinderella, being a more complete character and having a more active sidecast she has a better relationship with supporting her, kind of means she doesn't have to do much to move the plot along in the actual story. You should watch the sequels. Now, Sleeping Beauty. Even before I watched the movie for the first time for this video, I already knew it would be different. And not just because of the aspect ratio, but I figured its inclusion would be important. For one thing, it's definitely part of this era. For another, with how similar Cinderella and Snow White are, similarities they share with the movie that ends with the prince slaying a dragon would be really informative. And can I just say, Merida totally jacked Snow White's story when she made Maleficent's death curse into one of sleeping until someone kisses you. Actually, in all honesty, a lot of this movie feels like a combination of the last two. And not just because they're all based on stories from the same source. Fun fact, the prince was actually supposed to get the captured by the bad guy plotline in Snow White. But he proved to be so difficult to animate that they decided to just cut him down as much as possible. You know, there's probably a good video to be made about the original Grimm's fairy tales that inspired these movies that someone more informed than me should make. Aurora immediately breaks the mold by not having a miserable childhood. Well, any more miserable than a French peasant living in a forest.
Now, Father, you're living in the past. This is the 14th century.
Nowadays, I'm still the king.
Raised in secrecy to protect her from Maleficent's curse, she had what could be called a normal childhood. You know, apart from the isolation meant to protect her from something she doesn't even know exists. She does have the best dynamic with her prince compared to her predecessors, by virtue of having one that isn't just being vaguely in love. Probably has something to do with the fact he has a name, Prince Philip. Aurora's whole conflict is really a matter of having her life thrown in the air when she finds out she's a princess. Which, yes, is hyper-focused on the guy she met that morning, but that's also like the only thing being a princess would actually ruin for her. This is also the first movie so far that's actually a romance. Cinderella has its characters have romantic motivations in the latter third, but the romance isn't really the focus of the movie. If you get 50 minutes and 2/3 into a movie before the main romantic pair are even in the same room, is it really a romance? And honestly, in regards to Snow White, I suppose you could make like more of an argument what with the inclusion of say true love's first kiss and all that, but like I've already brought up that the prince gets cut out of so much of the movie, so like is he even there? Aurora's desire to meet people comes to pass in the form of her meeting with the prince, and both characters' conflicts are directly related to the desire for true love. Also, both have names. I feel that's also an important factor. Aurora has even less narrative push than Cinderella, and that's before she loses consciousness as part of the premise of the movie. So Philip has to kiss her to wake her up. But first, he needs the fairies to overcome their fear of Maleficent and save him, because now it's his turn to be locked in a room while tiny people get him out. The funniest part of this movie is that Aurora is hardly the protagonist, but neither is Philip. It's the fairies. They make the most decisions on the good guy's side, have the closest thing to a character arc, arguably the most emotional scene, and you can basically trace the entire narrative solely by following their journey.
I'd give the clothes off Benito's back if you really needed that.
So, what have we learned? The most obvious similarity is the similar method of creating sympathy. Taking a girl and forcing her down from what should be her lifestyle into one of, well, labor is a quick way to get people to go, "Oh, that poor girl." But it also informs the relationships the characters have with the villains, because they live in their houses. And by contrast, Aurora is almost shockingly separated from Maleficent. You know, when I lay all this down, I think I'm starting to suspect why Sleeping Beauty isn't as popular as the other two. I don't know if this really counts as a criticism when it's like part of the very premise, but these movies have a habit of shelving the main characters for the climax. They do in fact wind up needing to be saved in some way. And yeah, for 2/3 of them, sleeping through the climax is, well, the point. Like, is Sleeping Beauty really Sleeping Beauty if she's awake? Sounds like an interesting writing exercise. But even Cinderella needed to be let out of her room, and the climax is kind of a Tom and Jerry skit. I think ultimately these movies wanted an at least slightly violent climax, but involving the princesses would ruin their image. You wanna know something crazy though? There is one thing Snow White does better than the other two movies, and that's focus on the main character. Between the mice in Cinderella and the fairies in Sleeping Beauty, Snow White is basically the movie where I'm like, yeah, this is definitely about snow. Cinderella might as well be named Cinderella and the Funny Mice, and Sleeping Beauty is about the fairies. When you watch these movies back to back, the themes of wishes becomes a lot easier to understand as something that's integral to Disney's beginning. Both Snow White and Cinderella began with the main character singing about their wishes and dreams. These are really the first Disney Princess I Want songs, and they exist to give the girls characterization of not just being complacent even while in the clutches of their enemies. They may be hardworking, but they aren't devoid of the desire for more. Without the songs about wishes and dreams, both girls would be a lot less interesting. Aurora is happy with her 3 aunts, but she wishes she could meet people, and she literally dreams of meeting a prince, which Cinderella assures me is a wish her heart made. My heart makes a lot of crazy wishes. The entire thrust of their romance is that they aren't strangers because they met in a dream, and while it still has the "I just met you but you are my true love" thing, It does have some meaning in Aurora's decision to trust this guy and how they connect over, well, the fact that they met in dreams. I think a very male-slanted attitude has been cultivated when it comes to looking at heterosexual couples where one half isn't a character. If the female character isn't well written, then she's seen as only existing for the man. But if the male character isn't well written, then it's an example of an interesting female character being paired with a bland guy for the guy's sake. And I'm not saying that there aren't numerous examples of both of these being true. I'm just bringing this up to draw attention to the fact that the princes in Snow White and Cinderella, the first movie, aren't characters. They are rewards. They have like a combined 30 seconds of what could be called unique characterization, but they are ultimately prizes the narrative presents to the girls for enduring whatever the story has thrown at them and coming out the other side. They are effectively the male equivalent of the hero gets the girl trope. Also, because these movies are aimed at a primarily female audience, I think, that's who the future movies wind up talking to. But it's funny that the whole "you can't marry someone you just met" thing is usually directed at girls when, like, the guys in these movies are the ones who are falling in love at first sight. The girls usually need at least a little convincing. Even in fairy tales infamous for instant love, girls are still playing hard to get. The prince literally appears in response to Snow singing about her true love and serenades her. But in the grand scheme of things, up until the true love's kiss, he's basically a "that would be nice" attached to the actual story of Snow White. And then what do you know? The nice thing happens and the prince shows up to save her life. Prince Charming catches sight of Cinderella not even paying attention to him and is immediately enamored enough to promise to marry anyone who can fit her shoe, even though like a minute earlier he was expressing just complete disinterest in his father's obvious scheme to marry him off. Prince Philip fights a dragon for Aurora because he's convinced she's his true love. And conversely, Aurora, while sad, actually seems to be ready to never see him again. It helps he's in the movie long enough to have a character. Actually, his character in this reminds me a lot of what I remember from Prince Charming in the third Cinderella movie. So you know it's good. These do not feel like the girl is your reward situations. They are more like, this guy loves you so much, he will appear out of nowhere to wake you up from cursed sleep, whisk you off to a life of luxury in his castle, and fight the forces of hell for you. So, classic Disney princesses. Their movies are not perfect, but they are, well, fun. There's a sense of laid-back innocence and sincerity to them that just makes them entertaining to watch. But then again, these are literally fairy tales. And if you actually go back to watch them, you find that there's more to what's going on in these stories than what they are giving credit for, with themes of persevering through hardship with a positive attitude, the importance of wishes, and the power of love. And you can practically see the improvement in how these stories are written with time. The respective villain and princes all get better with each movie. And while I have some issues with the very structure of the stories, some of which seem to be inevitabilities in trying to adapt European folk tales into feature-length films, I can't lie, the princesses make for better characters than I thought. Except Cinderella. I've watched that movie like 20 times, she's kind of exactly how I remember, which is still good. What do you think of the classic Disney princesses? What do you think of this video? Should I go up the list to the Disney Renaissance, or should I give these movies a more individual look? Tell me down in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content, or check out my previous videos. Thank you, and good day.